Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Age Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 8 tight end rankings for the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're talking about all things related to the tight end position, starting off with tight end matchups. We'll talk about which defenses are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks thus far this season on average in a half PPR scoring setting. Of course, today's rankings are for half PPR. After we cover matchups, we'll talk about my top 16 tight end rankings. For those of you who are looking for a specific tight end, you can go down into the description of the video and find timestamps. While you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are on our way to 33,000. We're making content for fantasy football every single day for the entirety of the season, so make sure you join the community. Of course, if you want to join the community and take the next step, you can join our recently public Discord server. The link is down in the description. For those of you who are trying to get questions answered, we will be having a community AMA later on this weekend on Saturday. For those of you who are interested, go ahead and join that just by clicking on the link. Outside of that, make sure you click the like button, comment down below. I really do appreciate it. And let's get into my Week 8 tight end rankings, matchups, and all of the above. All right, so let's start off by talking about some matchups going into this upcoming week. Specifically, the more advantageous matchups, of course. The Atlanta Falcons are giving up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. In fact, they're also giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. Is it really a surprise? I don't think so. But unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers don't have a tight end on roster that they want to use actively. Ian Thomas maybe will catch a touchdown once in a blue moon. Whatever. We're not interested in it. We're not taking advantage of it. It's unfortunate. Now, a tight end that I'm definitely looking at and a guy that I want to play this week in every single league I possibly can is Jonnu Smith against the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals are giving up 19.44 fantasy points in a half PPR to an opposing tight end. I mean, that is an unbelievable number. Giving up 6 catches, 70 yards almost, and a touchdown per game. I mean, you absolutely need to play Jonnu Smith this week. I know he was a little bit of a disappointment last week, but we'll talk about a couple stats that could intrigue you into continuing to play him. Of course, the New Orleans Saints take on Jimmy Graham. That is a revenge matchup that I think Jimmy Graham could potentially end up, getting a little bit of his beak wet, per se, and getting a couple more grabs than he typically does. Maybe the team wants to go ahead and allow him to dominate against his former team. There's a possibility that, especially if, in fact, Allen Robinson misses this game due to concussion, they're going to have to go ahead and find more receiving options. Outside of that, the Buffalo Bills, of course, give up a lot of points. They play against New England. They don't really want to use the tight end position at all. The Philadelphia Eagles take on, of course, Dalton Schultz and the Dallas Cowboys. I don't really know how much production we're going to see there because, again, the quarterback position right now isn't really solidified. Jacksonville Jaguars are on bye week along with the Washington football team, Arizona Cardinals, and Houston Texans. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take care of 3 of those potential matchups. Jaguars, Houston, and Washington all give up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. Unfortunately, we're going to miss out on that. But this kind of gives you a little bit more perspective as to which defenses are giving up the most points to tight ends. Now, in terms of matchups in which, some tight ends are just getting completely locked down no matter what, TJ Hockenson has to play against the Colts. That is a problem. But TJ Hockenson this year has been a 10-point guy every single week. So I have confidence that he could get it done. Vice versa in the matchup, Indianapolis takes on Detroit. Detroit doesn't give up a lot of points. Whether it's Trey Burton, Mo Alley-Cox, Jack Doyle, that could be an interesting matchup. We'll just have to wait and see. Does the fact that the team wants to heavily target the tight end position take precedent over the fact that these teams have been playing well against opposing tight ends? We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, Seattle this year hasn't given up a lot of points to tight ends. George Kittle's matchup proof. Maybe there's a difference when he plays against Bill Belichick, but even then, he was still able to, catch 5 passes, 55 yards, be relevant in said game. But either way, these are kind of the matchups that we potentially want to avoid. We'll kind of get an idea of what I think about them, my opinion on the matter, once I go ahead and divulge my rankings. So let's go ahead and let's get into those, shall we? My top 16 tight end rankings on the week, starting off with number 1, of course, Travis Kelce. Shouldn't be a surprise. I don't really need to talk about it for long. Unfortunately, Travis Kelce was irrelevant last week. Purely 3 catches, 3 targets, 31 yards, an irrelevant stat line. Hopefully, he catches an early touchdown or is active early in this game against the New York Jets, because if he's not, we could end up seeing another one of these games in which, of course, they're up 30, 40 points, and they don't have to use him in the second half. So hopefully Travis Kelce, which I'm expecting, will get more involvement early in the game, find himself in the end zone, and just have a solid 14-point fantasy week, then go and sit on the bench and do whatever you want for the second half. That's what I'm hoping for, and he is my number 1 on the week. My number 2 for this week is George Kittle, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier, he's matchup proof. Regardless of what he's playing against, I always want to play George Kittle. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 55 yards against Bill Belichick. To be honest, an 8-point fantasy week and a half PPR scoring format is not that bad when we're talking about the New England Patriots defense stopping tight ends in the past. So again, he plays against Seattle, a very advantageous matchup. I really look at George Kittle not really as a tight end, but more of as a receiver. And the fact of the matter is that Seattle's giving up a lot of points to receivers every single week and giving up a lot of points in general. This offense is predicated on, of course, running the ball, but then hitting them with play action and feeding their number one target, George Kittle. I expect them to get that done this week. I think George Kittle will have himself a great week against Seattle in this exciting matchup. Darren Waller is my number 3. You may have thought somebody else was going to come up as number 3, but Darren Waller has been absolutely incredible. The stat that I found was that even though Darren Waller has the exact same amount of targets and receptions as Travis Kelce, unfortunately, he has 150 less receiving yards and 2 less receiving touchdowns. That is the big difference maker between those two players. But regardless, his opportunity and his total receptions are identically the same. This past week, Darren Waller, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 50 receiving yards, caught that slant on the goal line, screwed over a lot of Josh Jacobs owners, but regardless, got himself a receiving touchdown, the ever elusive, because again, he struggled scoring touchdowns over the last 2 years. But either way, he plays against the Cleveland Browns. I think that's a great matchup. They move Darren Waller all around the field. They'll line him up out wide. Again, Cleveland give up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers. He is practically their leading receiving option, so why not start him? He is my number 3. I have a lot of hope that Darren Waller could reach his high upside and potential this upcoming week and put up a pretty good game in fantasy. Number 4 is Jonnu Smith. Again, you were probably expecting Mark Andrews to be a number 4, but we moved him out a little bit because Jonnu Smith himself has one of the best matchups that you could possibly get at the tight end position this upcoming week. Like we mentioned earlier, the Cincinnati Bengals have given up the second most points to opposing tight ends thus far this season. Now, specifically, you may be thinking, oh, okay, it's a great matchup, Andrew, but Jonnu Smith screwed me over last week. Well, that's unfortunate. He played against Pittsburgh. He was coming off a week that he was injured, and his ankle was a little banged up, and they really didn't need him in the game plan. This upcoming week, when he's healthy, fully practicing, ready to go, he is going to dominate that defense because in the last 3 weeks, the Cincinnati Bengals defense has given up, and I counted, 7 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. That is correct. In the last 3 weeks, 7 touchdowns. Jonnu Smith's going to have a monster week. Maybe even Anthony Firkser can come out of nowhere and score a touchdown. That's how good tight ends are against Cincinnati. He should be absolutely fantastic. Our number 5 for this upcoming week is Mark Andrews. I have a lot of confidence in Mark Andrews. I think I'm starting him regardless. Why? Because he's Mark Andrews. He is my starting tight end. I drafted him to start every week. Even though his matchup isn't as advantageous, even though Pittsburgh has got a great defense and could potentially give him troubles, he is the number 1 receiving option of his offense. And that by itself is good enough for me. And the fact that he has such high upside, we've seen him put up 20 points 3 times this year. That kind of upside you can't find anywhere else. You're going to go ahead, you're going to lock in Mark Andrews. He's going to be a great play. I'm not worried about it. I just think these guys above him potentially have better matchups and could have higher potential ceilings. But again, if Mark Andrews shows up and if he catches 2 passing touchdowns, I'm not going to be surprised. So should be good to go as my number 5. Number 6 is Rob Gronkowski. I told him, prove me that you can be a productive fantasy player, and there it is. He's done it back-to-back weeks. In the last 2 weeks, he's combined for a total of 10 receptions, 140 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. That's 5 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks. Can you ask for much more in a half PPR? Not really. The fact that Chris Godwin's out this game, this upcoming week against the New York Giants on Monday Night Football, I'm perfectly fine with that. Why? Because Gronk is going to get even more opportunity in this passing game. Cameron Brate is slowly disappearing, and it looks to me like Gronk is finally back. I'm excited about his potential, and I think regardless of the defense, should be able to take advantage of it. He's my number 6. Number 7, we have ourselves Jared Cook. Jared Cook will continue to benefit as long as Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are out. Of course, Jared Cook last season he scored 9 touchdowns total. He is on pace to potentially kind of line up with that number this upcoming season because he is such a big target, 6'8". He is an automatic red zone threat every time they get down the field. Of course, they're going to be able to get down the field against Chicago. They did it last year very easily, in fact. And I think as long as Jared Cook is getting that opportunity, which he will once again have this week, he should be a great potential 9 points and plus with the potential of touchdown and extra yardage. I think Jared Cook's a great play, number 7. Number 8 is Richard Rodgers. Richard Rodgers really proved to me that regardless of who is the starting tight end of the Philadelphia Eagles, they are going to be relevant. He had 8 targets, 6 catches for 85 receiving yards, 11.5 points last week against the New York Giants. Plays against the Dallas Cowboys, who are giving up the 9th most points to opposing tight ends thus far this season. The amount of opportunity and the amount of targets that a player like Richard Rodgers gets just by being the starting tight end for the Eagles is uncomparable to a lot of these other teams. A lot of other teams aren't getting as many targets. I mean, if you go back and you look right now, Zach Ertz hasn't played in a couple weeks, and he's still amongst the top in targets this season. They always want to get their tight ends the ball, and I think Richard Rodgers, against a very advantageous matchup, should be able to get it done this week. Number 9 is TJ Hockenson, and though he has the toughest matchup at the tight end position, I think there's a potential that TJ Hockenson could still be able to score. Again, he is a red zone threat. He has scored multiple times this year down in the red zone, specifically because when Matthew Stafford is, looking for somebody, of course they're going to try to double cover Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and then they leave another one of these big targets open. A guy that has a huge catch radius ends up finding himself scoring touchdowns, averaging 10 fantasy points per game thus far this season in the first 6 games that he's played. He's right now the number 6 overall tight end. So again, TJ Hockenson, even though he's in a tough matchup, I'm throwing him out there. I have a lot of confidence in him this upcoming week. Number 10 is Hunter Henry. Now, unfortunately, Hunter Henry, a little bit of a dud last week. 7 targets, 3 receptions, 23 receiving yards, 3.8 fantasy points. But let me tell you why. Justin Herbert is still learning. And maybe he needs to learn the fact that he's got to get the ball to Hunter Henry instead of Virgil Green and Donald Parham, because both of the backup tight ends for the Los Angeles Chargers scored receiving touchdowns last week. And though that is unfortunate, hopefully the ball is going to go back in the direction of Hunter Henry, because again, if you are going to put Hunter Henry on the field and give him those opportunities, he will be able to deliver on them. Of course, it's unlucky that Parham and Virgil Green were both guys that scored this week. But again, I still think that there is a potential they're going to continue to use the tight end position as long as Austin Eckler is out. Even though those backfield players, Justin Jackson, Josh Kelly, had themselves, 5 catches a pop? They're throwing the ball a lot in Los Angeles. And I think there's a very good chance that Hunter Henry will still be a relevant part of this offense, especially when Mike Williams disappears on a given week, which is so interesting. Noah Fant as my number 11 shouldn't be a surprise. I know that there are a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. I know they have 2 other tight ends that get consistent amount of receptions per game, but that's just how this offense works. They always want to use 2 tight end sets. They want to run the ball consistently. Noah Fant should be a better play this upcoming week. Now that he's kind of gotten a week past his injury, he should be in a better spot, in my opinion, to get more targets, play more, and potentially get more receptions. Again, Drew Lock looked terrible. He looked like he lost all of his confidence last week early in that game. And for the majority of the second half, just wasn't even looking at Noah Fant. He was just trying to make big plays to get his team back into the game. He needs to learn to just take what is given to him. And if they're going to give him a 20-yard reception from Noah Fant, take it. Don't try to go for the deep bomb. There was a lot of times where Noah Fant was open, and he just didn't get the ball there, unfortunately. But I think he'll learn, and Noah Fant will be able to get back on track. We have ourselves Harrison Bryant as my number 12. Again, if he's going to outplay David Njoku in the snap count and out-target him, then of course we're going to play him over him. Harrison Bryant played 77% of the snaps for the Cleveland Browns last week in comparison to David Njoku's 60%. So both of them were on the field for the majority of the time because they wanted to run the ball. Both guys that are capable of blocking. But again, Harrison Bryant, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Again, if he's going to be the starter while Austin Hooper's out, he has a pretty good matchup this upcoming week playing against the Las Vegas Raiders, and good to get himself in the end zone once again. Harrison Bryant is my number 12, and a guy that potentially you should have picked up off waivers this week if he's still there. Another guy you could stream at tight end. Hayden Hurst has had 2 back-to-back great performances in fantasy. In fact, this past week, 6 catches, 68 yards. The week before that, 4 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Takes on Carolina's defense. Again, Carolina's defense, the last time that Hayden Hurst specifically played against them, he wasn't great. But when Julio comes back, I feel like it opens up more opportunity for Hayden Hurst and Russell Gage. This offense gets a little bit more life left into it. There's more opportunity to convert on third downs with Julio on the field and get these chains moving and giving them more opportunities as the game progresses. I think Hayden Hurst has kind of proven himself as a guy that needs to be started on a given week. Of course, if you have one of the better options, you go with them. But I think Hayden Hurst is still a guy that you can potentially roll out there tonight and find some great productivity out of. Number 14 is Evan Engram. And though Evan Engram dropped a 25-yard reception that would have made him have over 10 points this last week, the fact that he had 9 total targets, He ran the ball a couple times on the ground, 6 receptions, 46 yards, could have had 7 receptions for, 80 yards. Would have been a great week, but unfortunately, it's not the case. We're just going to have to continue to just roll with the punches with Evan Engram, and hopefully he is going to get back on track. Now, the issue I have this week is that they play against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay isn't a defense that I'm too worried about in terms of covering tight ends. I'm just worried about Daniel Jones and his longevity in comparison to a lot of other quarterbacks because, again, he's going to have Shaq Barrett, JPP, and, of course, Ndamukong Suh running him down this upcoming week. Now, the question is, what are we going to see from Evan Engram if, in fact, his quarterback is completely losing its mind? Well, Evan Engram has been running a lot shorter routes this season in comparison to seasons past. So I think he'll definitely have an opportunity to catch the ball more. The last time he played against Tampa Bay, last season, the first week that Daniel Jones started, in fact, Evan Engram had 6 catches for $113 and a touchdown against Tampa Bay. He might be able to do it once again against their linebackers, but it's going to be tough. I think Evan Engram has the potential. As long as he's getting 9 targets, that is a great number to see. He could end up getting it done this upcoming week as my number 14. Number 15 is Trey Burton. Now, as I'm recording this video, I don't know if Mo Alley-Cox is going to play. He didn't practice on Wednesday. There's a potential that he could return to practice. But again, this team wants to use the tight end position a lot. And Trey Burton, now that he's healthy, kind of looks like the option for them in terms of the receiving game, along with Mo Alley-Cox. That'll be their 1-2 combo. But again, if Mo Alley-Cox isn't playing and Trey Burton is a full go, I like him this upcoming week against Detroit regardless because Phillip Rivers wants to use the tight end position. This offense for the Indianapolis Colts for the last couple of years have been targeting the tight end more than a lot of other teams in the National Football League. They've been in the top 10 in those categories. So again, Trey Burton should be a great option this upcoming week as my number 15, a guy that you could potentially pick up off waivers and stream him. The last option, of course, is Jimmy Graham. Plays against the Saints. They give up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. It is a revenge matchup per se. I think this offense is in need for a kind of bit of life because, they were getting destroyed by the Rams this past week. I think Jimmy Graham's going to get the ball a couple more times than he usually does in a given week and potentially find himself some fantasy success. Those are my top 16 tight end rankings of the week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like the video down below, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and, of course, join the Discord community server. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, tomorrow, Hidden Gems, I'll see you guys. Peace.